Hello, and welcome to Every Persona Explained, where we take a look at the origin and representation of every persona. I'm your host, Winwright, and today we're taking a look at Robroy. Robroy is based on Robroy MacGregor, a Scottish outlaw and folk hero. Born in 1671, young Rob was given a sufficient education, whatever that means, but was a strong lad and became skilled as a sword fighter. He then began his illustrious career of cattle rancher. Unfortunately for him, there were plenty of bandits in Scotland at the time, and his cattle was stolen. Unfortunately for those bandits, Robroy took that personally. After one incident where 15 head of cattle were stolen, Rob gathered a group of men and hunted down the bandits. Of the 17 bandits in the group, 11 were wounded and 2 were killed, while Rob's group only suffered 4 injuries and 1 death, and he got his damn cows back. He was celebrated for this deed and used his newfound fame to do the obvious thing and began selling protection to local cattle herders, which is not a background I expected to be compatible with Folk Hero. Aside from his protection rackets, Robroy's early life was busy. He interfered with 2 noble women's engagements, fought off a group of soldiers 19-1, and got stuck in the middle of 2 rival noble families who both wanted his friendship. Of all his exploits, though, 2 stand out more than the others. These are his participation in the Jacobin Uprising of 1689 and the Jacobin Uprising of 1715. In 1688, King James II/7 was deposed from the throne due to him being a Catholic, which in a post-Henry VIII world was just not acceptable. The Jacobites wanted to restore James to the throne to right the injustice done to him and fight back against English rule. If that doesn't make any sense, James was from the House of Stuart, which came from Scotland, and he was ousted by his daughter Mary and her husband, the Dutch William of Orange. Still don't really get it? Yeah, me neither. Rob and his father Donald joined the uprising, and unfortunately for them, it was unsuccessful. Donald ended up in prison for a few years, and the MacGregor name was even banned, causing Rob to use his mother's name, Campbell, for a time. Afterwards, Rob turned to banditry because also his lands were confiscated, but luckily for him, he'd get a second chance. In 1715, James's son, also named James because I guess they couldn't come up with a better one, launched another Jacobin uprising in an attempt to place himself on the throne. And Rob was all in. He fought. He forged alliances. He led the Highland clans in a desperate struggle to return the House of Stuart to the throne. And then Dutch reinforcements showed up and the Jacobites were defeated. While some participants were executed, in 1717, British Parliament passed the Indemnity Act of 1717, named as such because politicians are very creative, that cleared all participants of any crimes and set all Jacobite prisoners free, except for specifically the members of Clan MacGregor. Apparently Rob and the rest of his clan caused so much of a problem both during and before the risings that they were singled out. He would eventually be captured and imprisoned a few years later, but he wasn't executed. And in 1723, a book was published called The Highland Rogue, or The Memorable Actions of the Celebrated Robert MacGregor, commonly called Robroy. This romanticized telling of his life transformed Rob into a legend, one that was so beloved that he was pardoned in 1727. He would eventually die in 1734 in his home of illness, a free man and a true Highlander. Later artists would use him as a subject of novels, poetry, and eventually movies. And in 1894, he would be given the greatest honor a Scotsman can receive. A cocktail was named after him. And that's Robroy, so how's he represented in game? Yo, why is he a Gundam? So I tried to come up with some justification as to why he looks like this. Japan does have a long history of giant robots in media, going back to at least the 60s, and much of that media has the robots fighting, so maybe all of the fighting Robroy was being represented with this design? But that's probably not the case. Robroy is the persona of Lufel, your teammate. Many teammates' personas are a mix of the inspiration and the teammate, such as Queen's persona based on the likely legendary Pope Joan, who is probably not a motorcycle, and I think that's what's happening here. Now, how is Lufel connected to giant robots? I don't know. However, his codename is Cattle, so that's something. Maybe. I do think his skirt plates look like a Scottish tartan pattern, but that's about it. Being only in P5X, he doesn't have an Arcana. If I were to give him one, I think Justice may work because, writing an injustice. But I think the best option would actually be Devil. It has quite a few violent meanings upright, including straight-up violence, but it also has meanings of freedom and independence when inverted. He is in the healer role because they needed to give you a healer early on. His moves are owl-based. This is representative of the fact that Lufel is an owl, sort of. His trait, Awareness, is again mostly about Lufel being an owl, with the exception of his level 0, which is called Red-Headed Hero. Many Celtic people, Scottish included, are often depicted as having red hair. All of the depictions I found showed him with brown hair, so the red is probably just because it's a Scottish stereotype. Overall, it's not good. The design is not very connected to Robroy himself, and only kind of, maybe, sort of, connected to Lufel. That being said, I do like it. Can we get this in the next Super Robot Wars? This was a very interesting character to look into, because I had vague knowledge of Robroy. I assumed he was very similar to William Wallace, and I guess he sort of is, in his legends at least, but he's kind of just a dude that was pretty strong, that was in a couple of failed uprisings, that got mythologized into a legendary folk hero. The two Nichols meme is very appropriate for Scottish rebels who failed but are somehow still heroes, because it's happened twice. Just as a spoilers, most of the personas from P5X are not going to be very accurate to their inspiration. A number of the male teammates you can get have personas based on female characters, but they're represented as male because the male. So just prepare for most of them to be not great. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. Let me know who you want to see next time in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Every Persona Explained.